This past week, I presided at a funeral service for a man who lived locally. His name was Max Van Doren. And we used part of today's gospel lesson as the readings in his service. And as I prepared for today, I realized how all of today's readings are really relatable to his life and ministry. So today I would like to share a little bit about Max's life. More specifically, I want to share about his passion for volunteering in this local community, because I think it'll help us better understand what it means to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And I also think it'll help us understand Paul's message from today's epistle. The part where he says, "We have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we may understand the gifts bestowed on us by God." So Max was an introvert. He was rather quiet. He was very soft-spoken. He had this deadpan sense of humor. It was kind of hard to get. But once you got it and you hung out with him, he was kind of hilarious to hang out with. And he also just created this space of welcome. He had that space when you were around him where you didn't feel judged. He was in essence just this really gentle, kind, and loving man. And I met Max and his wife Faye while I was the chaplain over at Montecedro in Altadena. And he was caregiving for Faye. Her health was declining, waning back and forth, and I spent time with Max and his wife and his family in the hospital, and Faye died, and I was with Max then, and I did Faye's funeral too. And then I spent time with Max in the months after. Now, during this same time as I arrived at Montecedro and I met Max and Faye, I was also working on a program at Montecedro called By Your Side. By Your Side is an education program, and it's also a volunteer program. And it really helps educate people on how to be with others when they're going through difficult times, when they're going through different and difficult transitions, and educates people on being with others at the end of their life, when they die. It gives you a sort of understanding of how to be a compassionate presence, someone who's a good listener. It helps you understand the dying process, both from like a biological sense and from a spiritual sense. Helps you understand what it is to volunteer as well, confidentiality. You might wonder why I'm telling you all this. It's because I've been talking to Neil and Sheila and Christine about maybe bringing By Your Side here to St. Luke's maybe sometime this year. So we're kind of excited about it, but I just want you to get a little sense of this program. So I invited Max to participate in the By Your Side program when I first met him. And he kind of considered it at the time. He was caregiving for Faye, and he signed up. And he took the program. And then I did not ask him to volunteer, but after Faye died, he was trying to figure out what to do, and he ended up volunteering for By Your Side and meeting with several residents there at Montecedro. And as I got to know Max and learn a little bit more about Max, I found out that before he volunteered with By Your Side, he had volunteered at the Huntington Hospital in the Senior Care Network for over 30 years. Does anyone know the Senior Care Network? So the Senior Care Network is really important. At Huntington Hospital, it's a program that helps people transition from the hospital back home. And if anyone knows about having any kind of medical incident, what happens often is someone will get sick and then they'll return home without the proper support and then be returning to the hospital really quickly. So this program really provides the support necessary for people to return home in a very healthy way. And at the service, there were several volunteers and members of the leadership from that program there to celebrate Max's life. And one of the managers shared her experience working with Max. She said that oftentimes the discharge nurse that they had go and visit patients would meet with those patients, and they would tell that discharge nurse that everything was fine. We're fine, we don't need any help. And the manager knew that that probably wasn't the case. And that's when she sent in Max. He would go and he would sit with the patient, or maybe that person's spouse, or their daughter, whoever the caregiver was, and whoever was helping with that process of transition. And he would just quietly listen. And she said, inevitably, those people that wouldn't share anything with that discharge nurse would open their hearts to Max. And they would share their struggles. They would provide him with valuable information about difficulties like, transporting that loved one somewhere, maybe going home, or challenges with mobility when they got home, going to the bathroom or preparing food, or really deep places of challenge like depression that Max saw, would scribble down his little notes about it, and then he'd take it back to this manager, he'd take it back to the support team, and then the hospital could offer the appropriate support. He created a space where those who needed care felt heard and could communicate it, and then he was able to communicate it to those who provided the care. He was like a mediator, and it left both sides feeling fulfilled. He enhanced the organization, and he lifted everybody up in his presence. Now, in today's gospel, we hear Jesus say, "You are the salt of the earth." We all know that salt enhances the flavor of food and makes it real yummy. And all you need is a little bit of salt, and it makes a huge difference. And this is exactly what Max provided. He volunteered once a week, just a little bit of time where he did a little bit of listening and provided a little bit of support, and it made a huge difference. In today's gospel, Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." Now, God is the source of that light, but Max was an example of letting that light shine through him. I saw that same light shining in the faces of those who shared about his life at the service. It was that light that carried them as that loving community. And together, they made the world a brighter place. Now, this service was over here at Live Oak Cemetery. It was kind of the traditional sense and the modern sense of a service. It was graveside, but Max's daughter, Amy, who had organized the event, made sure that her sister and Max's two grandchildren, who were not able to physically be there, they could join in virtually. So there was an iPhone floating through the service so that people could see. It was perfect. It was a small gathering, so everyone had the opportunity to share. And I think one of the real most profound things that I heard was something that his daughter Amy said. She said something that I think speaks to the reading from Corinthians, where Paul says, "We have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we may understand the gifts bestowed on us by God." It's the gifts we receive from Jesus Christ and Him crucified, the gift of resurrection, the gift of transformation, being something other than we know ourselves to be. And Amy shared that when Max was a young man, he started his volunteering out at Huntington Gardens. She shared that as a volunteer, he was able to tend to the roses, and Max loved roses. He loved the solitude of gardening, and as an introvert, this was a great volunteering opportunity for Max. During that same time, Max was about, as he was there for many years, but when he was about 60, his father got sick, and his father died. And so he spent time with his father in Huntington Hospital and in various care facilities. And it was while he was with his father at that time that he saw patients and residents in those care facilities that were living alone. And he saw a need. And Amy shared that she believes it was after Max saw his father die and experience those hospitals and care facilities that he transitioned from volunteering at Huntington Garden to Huntington Hospital. As an introvert, it must have been a little uncomfortable for him taking on that volunteer role where he would be meeting with people one-on-one. But he did it anyways. And in a way, he transformed into something new, and he caused a new light to shine. A light that touched so many lives, eased so much suffering, and continues to shine, and shined in all of those that were gathered that day. Max underwent a process of understanding the gifts of the Spirit bestowed upon him by God. Being of service, helping those in need, is a transformative experience. It happens at work, with those that we're serving at work, with those that we're working with. It happens when we volunteer and help others out. It happens when we care for a child, or we care for a spouse, or we care for a friend, or we care for a complete stranger. When we give our lives for something other than our own needs and concerns, the world is a different place. It's a place with a little more kindness. It's a place with a little bit more love. And it is through being of service to others that we can better understand the gifts the Spirit bestowed upon us by God. But I must say, it does take a little bit of intentionality. We don't want to lose our saltiness. We can all act a little unconscious sometimes. We can all get exhausted and find ourselves in a little bit of a mood. You know what I'm talking about? That's all part of life. That's what happens. But when we forgive ourselves and we forgive each other, when we really embrace that confession of sins that we do in this service, when we really embrace the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses and those who trespass against us, we can be forgiven, and we can be transformed, and we can choose a new path, a loving and supportive path. It's something that we choose day by day and moment by moment. So, remember, you are the salt of the earth. It only takes a little bit of your love and kindness to make a huge difference in the world. And you are the light of the world. Don't hide your light under a bushel basket. You are part of a community, and with your light, this community shines even brighter. Amen.